Hi there, I'm just going to run down using the model, applying the theory to analyse the process of what I did and whether it met my learning needs. And I'm going to separate this into two parts. So I'm going to approach this part differently, applying the model by talking about it. The other one I was more writing it into the PowerPoint, but this is just going to be showing and connecting with all the different documents that I had gone through. So I just want to look at my professional learning need again. It was to learn about critical reflection strategies, tools that could aid transformation of note-taking skills approaches in first-year university students. Also to gain experience of applying these strategies in an online teaching environment. And in terms of actions related to that was to gain knowledge, effective strategies, critical reflection in the classroom, which I talked about in the last analysis of how that went. But now what I wanted to focus on here is applying these appropriate strategies to the context of my learners' needs in an online setting, and to know how to actually apply it, and with Mesiro's transformative process framework in mind. And I sort of narrowed down the idea of disorientating dilemma and assumption, challenging assumptions, and then critical discourse, and applying those sort of three aspects of Mesiro, because it was within all the other critical reflection I saw sort of overlap in those three crucial areas. So I'm going to reflect on how that went, whether I did achieve what I set out to do, whether I am now, in a sense, better off for that in terms of what I can actually do, and what I know to apply to my practice. So first, I think I'm going to revisit the model that I'm applying to look at this again, reflect on this again. It's Berg, Coe and Walker's model, and you'll notice there's a big circle there, and that's because really when you read about it in the original book, this is really what the focus of, or the contribution of this model is. The outcomes sort of come naturally out of that anyway, and this is really the process they want you to go through in the middle here. I'm going to focus on that because I think that's what this model actually contributes to the reflective area. So the first thing I need to do is return to my experience. Then I need to utilize my positive feelings, bolster those, remove obstructing negative feelings, and turn those into a positive, what I can learn out of the things that didn't go as well as I wish they had have, and then reevaluate at the end of that. So that's what I'm about to do in terms of attaining those learning goals that I've just spoken about. So I've got a few things open in order to do that. What I'm going to do now is go to OneNote. Where are you, OneNote? And I'm just going to, I'd already written in a reflection actually, but now I'm returning to the activities again. I've written in a reflection before applying this model, just so that I'd actually noted down a description of what happened and how I was feeling about it, and what was positive, what was negative. But I'm going to revisit this again for each of the activities that I did in that session, and look at the positive and negative feelings that act as data for me to evaluate. So looking at the first activity, I showed a very short peer video, very effective, and that's what I've highlighted and read. Having re-evaluated it as part of this model, I've gone back and I've highlighted some stuff in red to revisit those feelings about it, and just highlighted what the feeling aspect of it that's coming out and what I described here according to Berg and Walker's model. So yeah, it was a very beginning. I remember it was a very effective beginning in the session. It was very clear as they watched that short video of students talking that they connected with the fact that it was coming from their point of view and as fellow students rather than my point of view. So it took the power structure out. They were able to connect with what the students were saying. These were students that were the same as them but 1 year on, and I could see that the lights were coming on in terms of that short video, simple, but At the end of it, I asked the students what stuck out from that video and wrote their responses on the board. I wanted to know, and these were the things that stuck out. They were very tangible things that stuck out. But then I asked them, do you do headings and subheadings? Some people put up their hands. Do you use colour? Some people put up their hands, others not. Do you write in your own words? A few less hands went up. And do you fill in your notes afterwards? And nobody put their hands up. So I was already starting to create a disorientation in a sense of, oh, these are successful students. And I saw in their eyes that they knew that these guys, there's probably something they needed to take on from the session in terms of it. Wasn't really so much to get across the ins and outs. It was just to start to use story to do it. So it was very effective, that the use of the student's story, just to activate the identity side of things, the approach side of things, before moving on to the next activity. So I'd say my feelings in terms of Booth's model were very positive in that regard. I would say that I can continue to add that to my practice, that this is what worked. It worked to use these kinds of peer stories to create reflection, and it's something that I can add to in the time that I've got as a learning advisor, to add a little bit of the element of that to create reflection in my practice. So I'm quite happy about that, and I could use it in further workshops I run at the beginning to show videos. I didn't really have any negative feelings at that point, so I'm going to move on to the next activity that I ran. This one was a beefier video, a much longer video that required students to stop at various points along the video and fill in a sheet that I'd handed out, and I'll show you what that sheet was. The video was going through 5 styles of note-taking, and at the beginning of the video there was a PDF that it stopped on, and I decided the best thing to do, because I was training them how to do this, was to stop on the first stop and get them used to what to put first, get them in the habit of what to do at each stop. So I gave those instructions at the beginning: turn on the video and play it until the first stop, and then I'll tell you what to do. And the first stop was for them to click on a PDF that came up, scroll down to the principles, and write them in their own words. So what I was trying to do actually was to stop them from just copying the notes from that sheet and writing them in here, but to write those into their own words onto this sheet, because I wanted them to learn how to write notes in their own words, to critically use their minds to reformulate what they're hearing in lectures into their own words, to take superior notes. So one of the things that, and I'll get on to what happened with that, basically there were a slowness to know how to use the technology, and so I was having to train them, as it were. Now, applying Booth's model, I meant to try to recount these negative feelings in a positive manner. I wasn't really feeling negative. I just went into an ESOL zone of needing to go around to help, to assist, to give people extra assistance in how to do things, which I was doing. A few were onto it, a few weren't, and they weren't used to being in a blended environment and using technological tools like this. So I realized at that point that it was more, I was going to have to both train them more than expected in how to use online stuff while teaching them to reflect on notes taking. So I was kind of doing 2 things at once. And I think that in terms of what Booth and Walker say, is that you should take that negative and turn it into a positive. And so I was actually starting to think in the class on my feet about what to do here. One, I would have to go around a little bit more to train these guys through these activities a bit more, perhaps have to stop on the next stop as well, onto the mind map part as well, to just help them out with going through that part. And I realised now even further that the session would have to be expanded for this level of students to a 2-hour session rather than a 1-hour session. That this was, and I'll talk about this, this was actually working really well. But there were time limitations that meant it couldn't work quite as well in this particular 1-hour or 50-minute session I had. And it would if I'd had a longer period where it would have been incredibly effective. So I'm changing that negative really to a positive. So in the first one, some of them were able to take down things in their note in their own words. Even some of the Kiwis, there was a few Kiwis there, were reticent to write things in their own words. While that was a negative thing, it was also for me a very positive thing, because it meant that I was touching on something real. I was identifying something real that they needed to change, that if they continued that way, when they went from that transitional course into the degree, they would be unsuccessful because they were unable to take notes in their own words. So that was a critical thinking aspect. And it was very useful for me as an advisor to see that, one, that I was in the right place at the right time, that this note-taking thing really did need to be here, and that this session I was running really needed to be developed further, even if it had to be lengthened in order to meet these deficiencies that I was sort of seeing in the note-taking practice. And they weren't minor ones, they were major sort of deficiencies in note-taking ability, and predisposal towards it as well, to quickly take on board the idea of writing something in your own words, which applies to numerous skills that you need, even in writing assignments in the university. So we got through that, and I made sure and went round that everyone had, I got them into pairs, so they were assisting one another with this, and also that they had, that I went round to make sure that they were getting enough, at least a couple of these written in their own words. Then I got the class to start again, to go to the next one, even if they hadn't finished, because we needed to get on to the next part. I showed them the mind map on their notes, and I said that I'd started out the mind map for them, that the first stop was talking about the outline method of note-taking style, that I'd written in some of that for them, that they could fill that out a bit more as an example. But when they came to the second note-taking style, they would have to draw a line here, put it in a major heading, and just take a couple of notes about what was said in that second one, and so on, until they'd filled in a mind map. So what I was trying to do was get them to learn how to reflect by actually doing the practice, so that they were doing something they'd never done before, and they were comparing that with what their previous practice. A mind map uses both major and minor headings, and that's used in all of the styles anyway. So how did that go? Well, this is a picture. There were varying levels of filling that thing in that went through there. This particular picture here shows that pair had got through 3 of the styles, and there were some really good things going on. There were a major heading there were some minor headings, and even some detail that was down here. So if this student was doing a completely new skill, this is quite a dramatic improvement in ability within a very short period of time. So on a positive side of things, that's actually a development of an actual skill in practice, which again I was thinking, boy, I wish I had more time, because at the end of this, about this point of time, I had to tell them, look, we've got to stop because we need to go on to the blog activity, which was for me the heart of the session, where they were going to compare their notes, comment on what their other students had in their notes. But this was really working. It's just that they required more time. to go through this. Another